Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack the stories behind the headlines. Today, we're diving into a really bold claim that certainly got our attention. It was August 2nd, 2025. President Trump made this striking assertion, labeling both Russia and India as, quote, dead economies. And not just that, he announced proposed tariffs on Indian imports and penalties for India's trade with Russia.
Right. Strong words.
Very strong.
Yes.
So it's a provocative statement. And, our mission in this deep dive is to consult the sources we have. We're talking economic indicators, trade dynamics, geopolitical context, everything, really, to understand if this characterization truly holds up. So the big question for you, our listener, are these economies really dead?
Well, look, the material we've reviewed immediately presents a pretty compelling counter-narrative. This claim by President Trump, frankly, it just misrepresents the economic vitality of both nations.
Oh.
Far from being dead, the data suggests that Russia and India show, significant resilience, ongoing growth, and frankly, undeniable global influence. And this strength, as we'll see, it's largely driven by their strategic economic policies, robust domestic markets, and an impressive geopolitical adaptability that often kind of flies under the radar.
That sets the stage perfectly. Let's start with India then, because hearing it described as a dead economy, it really does make you pause, especially with all the buzz about its rapid ascent. What did the sources actually reveal about India's economic standing right now?
Yeah, it's a fair question. The economic data from the various reports we have is quite clear on this. India, in 2025, boasts a nominal GDP of around $4.19 trillion.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes it the world's fourth largest economy. Remarkably, it surpassed Japan and now trails only the United States, China, and Germany.
Fourth largest, okay.
And looking ahead, the IMF and private firms like Nomura, they're projecting India's real GDP growth at about 6.2% for 2025-26.
So still very strong growth then.
Absolutely. It positions India as one of the fastest-growing major economies globally. And what's truly critical here, it's highlighted in the sources, is that this impressive growth, it's primarily fueled by strong domestic demand.
Right, the internal market.
Exactly. And this isn't just a statistic, it's a critical strategic advantage. It means India's economic engine is largely self-reliant. That gives it remarkable insulation from external pressures, including, importantly, these proposed tariffs we're talking about.
Interesting. And specific sectors?
Oh yeah, if we look at key sectors driving this momentum, you've got pharmaceuticals, information technology, and services generally as powerhouse industries. India's IT sector, for instance, it contributes billions in revenue annually to global software and services exports. It's a massive player.
Those numbers really do paint a very different picture than the dead economy label. So beyond that domestic strength, how do India's trade relationships challenge that characterization?
Well, India's trade profile really showcases its dynamism. It's quite active. Take U.S.-India trade. In 2024, trade in goods reached an impressive $129.2 billion.
So a significant partner for the U.S.
Definitely. That makes India the U.S.'s 10th largest trading partner. And not only that, India actually maintains a substantial trade surplus with the U.S. It was estimated at around $45.7 billion in 2024.
A surplus with the U.S.
Correct. Driven by competitive exports like gems, jewelry, textiles, automobiles, things like that.
Okay, so what about the criticism from President Trump about high tariffs? How do the sources frame that?
Right. That's a key point in his statement. The analyses in our sources explain these tariffs aren't necessarily signs of economic weakness. Instead, they're often portrayed as strategic measures, basically to protect their vital domestic industries, especially micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs. These employ millions, and they really bolster economic stability.
So a protective measure, not necessarily an aggressive one.
That's how many analysts see it. Plus, India has been incredibly proactive in diversifying its trade partnerships. They've secured free trade agreements, like with the UK, and they're actively negotiating with the EU, Oman, Chile, New Zealand.
Spreading the risk, basically.
Exactly. It's a country consciously expanding its global reach and reducing dependencies on any single partner.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting, I think. A key piece of India's strategic puzzle is its energy policy, especially since 2022. How do the sources connect that to its economic vitality?
Ah, yes, India's energy pragmatism. It's a prime example of its adaptability in, well, a pretty turbulent world. Since Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, India has significantly increased its imports of discounted Russian crude oil.
Significantly.
Oh, yes. This now accounts for somewhere between 35% and 40% of its total oil supply.
That's a huge chunk.
It is. And this move has been crucial in helping stabilize inflation amid global energy price volatility. That's a point noted by former trade official Ajay Srivastava in one of the reports. And what's more, Indian refineries, like those operated by Reliance Group, they've actually profited from this
How so?
by refining this cheaper Russian crude for domestic use and then also exporting refined products like diesel to Europe. So they're boosting their economic gains that way too.
A pragmatic, maybe even opportunistic move?
You could certainly frame it that way. Now, about Trump's proposed tariffs, analysts suggest they might reduce India's GDP growth maybe by 20-30 basis points.
So 0.2 to 0.3%.
That's right. It's not insignificant, but the consensus among analysts we read is that India's robust domestic resilience and its diversified trade strategies will largely mitigate that impact. The economy is seen as adaptive and strategically positioned, definitely not on its way out.
That's a powerful assessment of India's economic strategy. Okay, let's shift focus now to Russia. The widespread perception of Russia's economy, especially under sanctions, is often that it's really struggling. How do our sources present its actual reality? Because it seems like headlines often tell one story, but maybe the data reveals something different.
It's true. There's a very strong perception of Russia's economy being severely damaged by sanctions. However, the sources we looked at, they paint a picture of, well, remarkable resilience. Russia's estimated nominal GDP in 2025 is about $2.076 trillion. That positions it as the world's 11th largest economy.
Still quite large, then.
Yes, and despite the extensive Western sanctions following its invasion of Ukraine, Russia's economy has shown surprising strength. Official Russian data, for instance, reports a real GDP growth of 5.9% in 2024.
5.9%. That seems very high under sanctions.
It does. Now, international estimates are more conservative, suggesting maybe 3.6%, but even that number points towards growth, not collapse.
Okay, so what's driving that resilience?
The primary driver, as our sources really emphasize, has been its energy exports, specifically redirecting them to non-Western countries, particularly India and China. These markets have effectively offset the loss of its traditional European markets.
So it's a pivot east, basically.
A major pivot east. And this isn't just about redirecting existing trade volumes. It's a fundamental shift in global energy dynamics that we're witnessing.
That redirection of energy exports is clearly crucial. Can you explore the specific economic relationship between India and Russia that the sources highlight? How has this partnership managed to not just survive, but apparently thrive despite all the global pressures?
Absolutely. The India-Russia economic partnership is really a cornerstone of Russia's recent economic stability. India now imports nearly 2 million barrels of Russian crude oil daily.
2 million barrels a day.
Per day. That makes India Russia's largest oil buyer by volume.
Wow.
And the bilateral trade between the two nations, it reached a record $68.7 billion in fiscal year 25. Dominated, of course, by Russian oil, but also fertilizers and metals going into India.
So this trade has been beneficial for both sides, then?
Very much so. It's been vital in sustaining Russia's fiscal position while, at the same time, providing India with much-needed affordable energy. And there are also significant mutual investments. Russian investments in India are valued at around $20 billion, mainly in energy, petrochemicals, steel. And Indian investments in Russia are around $16 billion, targeting oil, gas, and even IT.
So there's long-term commitment there, too.
It appears so. Both nations even have this ambitious goal to scale their bilateral trade up to $100 billion by 2030.
$100 billion.
Yeah, which clearly reflects their confidence in this partnership despite external pressures. So Russia's ability to so effectively redirect its vast energy exports to Asia, primarily India and China, it truly undermines any claims of a dead economy. It highlights its adaptability and, frankly, its continued relevance in global markets, even under significant duress.
So what does this all mean when we zoom out and look at the broader geopolitical context? How do the sources explain the deeper reasoning behind these economic choices, especially, in response to U.S. pressure? It feels like we're seeing a kind of realignment happening.
Yeah, and this raises an important question, doesn't it? How do these strategic moves fundamentally challenge the prevailing global economic narratives? President Trump's remarks, as our sources point out, they seem to fail to account for the sophisticated geopolitical strategies being pursued by both India and Russia.
How so?
Well, take India's decision to purchase Russian oil and arms. It isn't just defiance for defiance's sake. It reflects its long-standing policy of strategic autonomy,
Yes, strategic autonomy.
meaning prioritizing its own national interest over external pressures, even from the U.S. to, say, isolate Russia.
Hmm.
Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri actually criticized what he called double standards in Trump's tariff threats.
Double standard.
Yeah, pointing out that some European nations are, in effect, indirectly importing Russian energy through refined products coming from places like India.
Interesting point.
And India's vulnerability to potential U.S. sanctions is also significantly reduced because it's deliberately diversified its oil imports. It gets oil from nearly 40 countries now.
Not putting all its eggs in one basket.
Precisely. It's a deliberate strategy to build economic independence. And Russia, for its part, it expertly leverages its energy wealth to maintain global influence despite sanctions. It emphasizes its ability to project power, maintain fiscal stability. You even had Dmitry Medvedev referencing the old Cold War-era dead-hand nuclear system. It underscores Russia's defiance.
Right, and both nations are key players in BRICS. How do the sources explain BRICS' role in this new multipolar world order? It sounds like it's becoming more than just a talking shop.
Their participation in BRICS is a very clear signal. Yeah, it signals their collective push for a more multipolar economic order. It's about challenging U.S. dollar dominance and fostering alternative trade and financial networks, importantly, without necessarily confronting the U.S. directly all the time.
So it's not purely anti-U.S., as Trump claimed.
Well, that description oversimplifies their aim, according to the analyses we read. What the reports suggest is that BRICS members are focused on reducing reliance on the U.S. dollar and strengthening their own economic ties amongst themselves and with other non-Western partners. This isn't just a political statement. It's a tangible economic shift towards a more balanced global economic landscape, one where multiple centers of power can, coexist and thrive.
This deep dive into the sources really does bring it all together, doesn't it? It makes President Trump's assertion that Russia and India are dead economies look like, well, a rhetorical oversimplification at best.
Absolutely. I think the key takeaway for you, the listener, is pretty clear from the material. India's rapid growth, its diversified trade relationships, its pragmatic strategic energy policies, they all demonstrate a vibrant, dynamic economy. And simultaneously, Russia's remarkable resilience amid extensive sanctions, and its continued role as a crucial global energy supplier. Well, that squarely contradicts any claims of collapse. Both nations' economic strategies and their geopolitical alignments, they strongly reflect strength and adaptability, certainly not decline.
That's a powerful summary. So while President Trump's proposed tariffs might pose some short-term challenges, our sources strongly suggest they're unlikely to derail the long-term trajectories of these major economies. It really appears that by mischaracterizing India and Russia, the president might be overlooking their growing influence and their critical roles in what is increasingly looking like a multipolar world order. So thinking about that, what does this more nuanced understanding of global economies mean for how we perceive and interact with international power dynamics in the years ahead? What stands out to you about how these traditional labels, like dead economy, might misrepresent global economic realities, and how might that impact our future global interactions? Something to think about.